What's up, everybody? Ben's just getting a couple things adjusted. This was just a crazy night. I mean, there's so much to discuss about this game. I really don't know where to start. I feel like this game had a story to it until about 9 minutes left to go, and everything just got nuked completely. Rockets win 123 to 122 on an incredible athletic tip in by Amen Thompson, literally at the buzzer, off the glass, off of a KD isolation and a double pump, maybe 16, 15 footer that was heavily contested. Looked like for sure the Rockets had lost, and Amen came flying in using that incredible athleticism to win the game. Uh, Preceding that was one of the most insane blunders, Tari Eason passing the inbound with about 8 seconds left, Ben, with the Rockets up one underneath the Heat's basket. Immediate turnover. It was just so crazy because the broadcast was saying, what you can't do here is turn it over. And he literally passed it to them. They quickly score on Jabari contested it, called goaltending. Rockets were down one, setting up that play. But there's so much to talk about. Reed Sheppard, Kevin Durant passing Michael Jordan tonight on the all-time scoring list. But Ben, I'm here with Ben DuBose of Rockets Wire and ClutchFans. I mean, just thankfully they got the win.
Yeah, and what's crazy about this one, Dave, Kevin Durant passed Michael Jordan. Let's start there. He's now top 5 all time in NBA scoring, which is a remarkable achievement. And yet, from a Rockets perspective, it feels secondary because in the big picture, what you saw tonight from Amen Thompson and Reed Sheppard combining to shoot better than 60% from the field, Reed making 5 of his 8 threes, Reed with 23 and 14, 0 turnovers, Amen with 24 and 18 with the final rebound leading to the game-winning tip-in at the buzzer. I mean, those two are the future of your franchise. We've talked
Yep.
about when it comes to the young core, so to speak, that's where the upside really is. And to see both of them have those level of games at the same time, starting next to one another, because obviously the Rockets made the change yesterday to send Tari to the bench and start Reed. So now you have Reed and Amen starting next to each other to see the synergies that those two have playing off one another, 23 years old or younger, to see both of them playing that way in a big game. Let's be honest. Like, the Heat are a pretty good team. They played very well tonight. Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo. There is talent there. There's playoff stakes. Rockets on night 2 of a back-to-back. To see your two most, I don't want to say necessarily best young prospects because Şengün is a 2-time All-Star, but let's say I would argue perhaps your 2 highest upside prospects to both go off in the same game at the same time against a big name opponent, and for one of them to win it at the buzzer. That's one of those, Kevin Durant led off the post game last night doing a vibe check. Dave, I'll do a vibe check with you right now. I'm assuming it's pretty damn good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I gotta say, I've been talking about Reed Sheppard as in like, I think he's more combo guard. He's got some point guard ability, but I really wouldn't call him point guard. I mean, 14 assists and 0 turnovers. I mean, I have to admit, it has humbled me. I don't anticipate we'll see this often. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong. But tonight he was finding shooters, making the right passes, moving the ball around the floor. Reed was terrific. Amen getting 18 boards. I mean, you highlighted these things to go with his 24 points on 10 of 17 shooting. I mean, those two, in my opinion, were absolutely terrific. Reed with a team high plus 17. And what was interesting, Ben, this is the second game Reed started, right? Since the switch was made from Tari. And I found fascinating is if you look at this starting lineup, and we've talked about this before, but you look at the 5 that are starting, it's easily been the most ineffective lineup of all the starting lineups that they've played. I'm talking about up to this point of the season. Like I think we said it was something like a -7 net rating, which is bad. And it really wasn't great early on. They started out 8-0, then gave up a 12-0 run, and Ime kind of did that quick hook again with less than 4 minutes to go, pulling Reed or pulling Şengün for Tari. But it's very clear to me that Reed, there are combinations that really kind of unlock Reed. He's got incredible shooting ability. He just needs some things around him. But what bucked the trend was that fourth quarter. I mean, I had a story here looking at, sort of the Reed Şengün minutes, and they were pretty bad, to be honest with you. Reed was like super good when he didn't have Şengün, and then super bad when he did have Şengün, or at least I'm talking about the team results.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hit 5 of 6 threes in a row. Jabari hit the 2, Reed hit 1, and then Aaron Holiday comes in and hits 2. And they played zone defense, which just, completely confused Miami. And they were down 10, 11 points and turned that thing completely around. Seemed to have the game under control. And then, what we talked about with that collapse. Reed was fantastic today. So I have to give him all the flowers and as well amen. But Reed, I thought, really did a great job, considering he's being kind of thrust into a role where he's being counted on for a lot.
And I think there's something to be said that Reed and Amen play well off of one another, and that's something that has implications beyond this season. Like, I know everyone, at least around the NBA, it feels like it's down on the Rockets because the last couple of weeks they went 0-4 against the Lakers, the Spurs, the Nuggets. But even if this season, with Fred and Steven out and the first year of KD, you're not able to patch it together down the stretch of this year, when you have two guys like what we saw tonight in Reed Sheppard and Amen Thompson, as young as they are, and they play well together, that's something that gives you hope for a long time here in Houston. And that's why I couldn't be happier seeing the way they won this game tonight, leaning on the backs of those two guys. And I do think, with regards to the point guard reps specifically, I think those two guys, they make it easier on one another. Neither of them is a full-blown point guard just yet, but when you play them together, you can sort of trade off possessions at times in terms of who does the heavy lifting and who's playing a little more off ball. Reed obviously has a lot of off ball gravity as a shooter, and then we know what he can do when he's in that dunker slot and able to, well, we saw the winning putback tonight. They both can play on ball, they both can play off ball as well. And so I think having those two, the synergies they have together, that's so big going forward, because that's one of those, team building implications. And then, the other big benefit to starting Reed Sheppard is that the Rockets have really increased their 3-point volume. They hit 14 last night. They hit 16 tonight. So that's an average of 15. And there may have been some tired legs because back-to-back 3 games in 4 nights. And yet with Reed Sheppard, I mean, he's basically a math advantage or a math equalizer at a bare minimum by himself. And so you put him in a starting lineup that at times can be a little mid-range heavy. We know Şengün and Amin aren't really 3-point shooters. It can make a big difference. And another benefit, so I want to shout out friend of the program, Anthony Duckett. He writes for Rockets on SI. He texted me yesterday. I thought this was the most random text. I'm going to read it now. What's up, man? What do you think about Aaron Holiday? This is at 4:15 yesterday afternoon. And I'm like, why are you texting about Aaron Holiday? He's already played. And I say, down shooting year and basically a 2-guard, so there's not a lot of room for him to play. Great teammate, though. And Anthony responded to me, have you seen the data on him, though? 8-2 when he scores in double figures, 8-5 last season when he's in double figures, 6-3 this year when he plays 20-plus minutes, 4-2 last year when he does. And that's interesting. And I do think that, Holiday's the kind of guy, when he gets hot, that's often the best version of the Rockets, because typically under Ime Udoka, they play good defense. And if you're able to hit threes at volume, then this is generally a team that's going to win a lot of games. The difficulty, especially when they prioritize playing Reed Sheppard a lot off the bench, Ime Udoka typically doesn't play 10 or 11 guys. Most teams don't. And it's tough if you're running, an 8 or 9 man rotation for 2 of your 3 or 4 guys off the bench being really small point guards, or at least defensively. Holiday may be a 2-guard in how he plays, but he's got a point guard's body. And so I think just sort of by default, if you're bringing Reed off the bench, it's tough to give extended minutes to Aaron Holiday as well. Otherwise, you're just really small. Well, all of a sudden, if you start Reed Sheppard, there's more of a pathway to play Aaron Holiday without you being too small. And he's combined for 5 threes the last 2 nights. So he's been a huge part of that volume. Mm-hmm. And he had a stretch in the fourth quarter tonight where he almost took over the game. So that's just a little side benefit. We're singing Reed's praises, and deservedly so. But one thing that it didn't I didn't even think about it until Anthony texted me yesterday. But if starting Reed Sheppard allows you to get this version of Aaron Holiday, certainly not every game, but let's just say, once a week or so as a stimulus, like that's a big deal for a Rockets team that's been searching for anything off that bench. Going into tonight, the Rockets were second to last in scoring in calendar year 26. This version of Aaron Holiday, who we know when he's right can shoot, that would be a big beneficiary. So let's make sure we shout him out as well.
Oh, no question. I hit those threes in the fourth that were huge. I mean, it was. I don't know. I don't like. For example, I agree 100%. Amen and Reed are your backcourt future. At least that's the way you're going forward with that. Even when Ime wasn't starting Reed, that's always been the plan of the organization. Eventually, Reed takes this over. It's going to be a little awkward when Fred comes back. I think Fred may start. But you just don't know what's going to end up happening in the offseason. But as far as Holiday is concerned, he was really good last year. This year, I think he still got that trust, and then he couldn't hit anything for a long while. I don't have the data in front of me. That's just what I remember. And then he fell out of the rotation completely for a good long stretch, which I thought was a little surprising just because Ime has always trusted him. Not that I questioned it like it was the wrong decision, just it was just surprising to me. And now he seems to be, earning some minutes back. Yeah, I mean those shots were huge. I mean that's like, what's really interesting, Ben. We talked about this at the start of the third quarter. The starting lineup was in. Rockets just offensively were great. Şengün was scoring. Reed didn't score, but I can't remember who else. I think Amen had some baskets. They were 7 of 10 in a less than 5 minute stretch. 7 of 10 from the field, 2 of 4 from three. Scored 16 points in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And they were outscored 20-16 because they couldn't stop anybody. The offense continued to thrive in that fourth when Reed Sheppard came back in, but their defense was pretty good for a good stretch as well. And it has to be because it went to that zone. I didn't study it the whole way as I was going, but it seemed like Miami suddenly couldn't do much with that. But for them to come up and score 123 points, that's something new. We haven't seen much of from the Rockets lately. And defensively, I still have some concerns. No question with this starting lineup. They're going to have some easier matchups at Chicago coming up. A couple other, I think you got Memphis coming up. But offensively, this was incredibly fun to watch. A lot of scoring tonight.
Yeah. And to address the switch they made before yesterday's game, starting Reed in place of Tari. I know you had the solo show last night, but just, I want to add a little bit of perspective on that. I really think a lot of this comes down to Tari Eason's struggles. Like, They need to get him right. And some people will undoubtedly ask, why didn't this happen earlier? Because the fan base has been asking for this really since the All-Star break, when Reed came out and was really hot on that road trip. We saw the big games he had in Charlotte and Orlando, and people have been sort of clamoring for it ever since. And of course, as you laid out, defense is the concern. Well, I think there's a couple of things that have happened. First off, I mean, there are always limits. And offensively, going into tonight, as I mentioned, they were averaging below 109 points per game in calendar year 26. That's 40 games worth of data. And that's second worst in the entire NBA. Only the tanking Brooklyn Nets were worse. So you were at a point where even if it is helping your defense some, and I know Ime said before last night's game that they did like still what Tari is doing defensively, at some point the offense is so bad that you have to try something else. So I think that's why we reached the point this week. It's just gotten so bad with a sustained slump. I know some people pointed to, Jabari had his shooting slump in January. This is not like that. Jabari's shooting slump was basically 8 games. Tari has been below 15% from three, dating back to before the All-Star break. So we're talking close to 20 games now that he's been below 15% from three. So I just think you reached a point. Your offense was so low at some point. If you're second to last in the NBA, it doesn't matter what you're giving up defensively if you just can't score. So something needed to change. And especially for that role, for the way this Rockets team is built, at least for this season, I think they clearly view their 4 most valuable players as KD, Şengün, Amen, and Jabari. Those are the core 4. Those are the guys that since training camp have been entrenched starters. That's not to say that they're the core 4 long term. I mean, hopefully Reed Sheppard can break into that tier and then some. I'm just saying for this particular season, those are the 4. They're almost always going to start, assuming they're healthy. So with the attention those guys draw, whoever is in that 5th spot needs to be able to hit open shots. And if they can't, the entire offense is going to bog down, as we've seen too often the last 2.5 months. And so when Tari's that 5th guy and he's shooting sub 15% from three for more than a month, I mean, it's tough to survive with. And I think that's ultimately what made the change. And the other thing is that, they said he was still competing defensively, but Tari's a guy. You mentioned the frustration late in the game tonight on that little turnover. To address some comments in the chat, yes, the Rockets absolutely should have called timeout. I was stunned that they didn't. They had 2 timeouts and didn't end up using both of them. So if you ever get that late in the game, Personally, I'm not a huge fan of fouling up three that early. I would rather wait to foul up three until closer to 5, 6 seconds, because even if the Rockets hadn't thrown away the inbounds, I mean, if they had done anything other than go 2 of 2 from the free throw line, the Heat are going to have a chance to win the game themselves. So I would have rather waited a little bit on the initial foul to begin with. But then certainly if you have multiple timeouts, use one of them then to get more organized. But Tari is the guy who made the turnover. I do, Ime in his pregame quote or postgame, that was the first time he addressed it on the record after the Atlanta game. He mentioned wanting Tari to relax. Tari, to me, as this slump has continued, seems to be a guy that's losing his composure a little bit.
Yeah.
That he's very frustrated, and it's starting to affect him in other areas. And so that's the other thing that drove it. And we saw it at times tonight. We saw last night, 30 seconds into the game, he fouled a 3-point shooter and it was a flagrant. That's why this needed to be made. And, Reed is proving that it's worthwhile with the production he's given you, 23 and 14. But aside from that, I mean, we've seen reminders as to why this was, I think we both said it after Wednesday's game. It was time for a change.
Yeah, and to that point, I noticed this in real time. I don't know what he was upset about, but Jabari was the one who was originally inbounding that ball. And Tari came running to him, clapping, and then got really upset. I don't know if he got upset with Jabari because he was not the one inbounding the ball, or because Jabari didn't pass it to him, which he would have been immediately fouled and gone to the line. I don't know which one, but it was clear that Tari was very frustrated when he ran up to Jabari trying to figure out something. My guess was it was because he wanted to inbound the ball. And then because I can't remember what the issue was, they re-inbounded the ball, and Tari did it this time and made that pass. This reminds me of a couple of past games. Remember the Orlando game at home when they made that? I can't remember if it was Şengün inbounding it, trying to get it to KD. Yeah. He was probably fouled. Ball goes, and then Şengün fouls him on the fast break and won. And then Şengün very luckily scores and then forces overtime where they ultimately win. But go ahead.
I thought you were going to say that hilarious 2019 game. No, 2019 in Madison Square Garden. Remember the PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon inbounds play underneath the basket where, PJ is just staring at it. He doesn't want to touch it. And Eric Gordon gives the ultimate Eric Gordon.
Yes, I remember vividly. Yeah, I was also going to remember the Amen one in Brooklyn. What was it? Yeah. A couple of years ago. I remember.
There. Yeah.
And they're all like trying to get somebody to pick up the ball. And oh my gosh.
D'Angelo Russell for three. Yeah.
That's right.
By the way, speaking of Tari, I will say it's sort of symbolic that the Rockets won a game on a tip-in at the buzzer, because this feels like getting one back from that game in Portland where they thought they had won at the buzzer, the Tari tip-in that was a 1/10 of a second too late. In this case, Amen's was a 1/10 of a second or maybe 2/10 of a second in time just before the buzzer. So some interesting symmetry there. Somehow the Rockets got one to go their way for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, on Tari, it's just very clear, like you said, something's probably very frustrating to him. I'm sure contract stuff's hanging over his head. I'm sure it's all everything. The weight of the last 15, 20 games is on him. I really don't know. But 2 of 7 from the field tonight and had that incredibly costly turnover. And, as I mentioned earlier, Ime still is, and you pointed this out, and I think it's absolutely correct. They're trying to get Tari going. I think Tari kind of forced the issue as far as the starting lineup change. As I mentioned, that starting lineup actually hasn't been great. You're playing Reed now for the future to get a look, and hopefully we get a lot more improvement. But the actual starting lineup, Reed, Şengün, Jabari, KD, and Amen has been largely ineffective this season. So let's hope that Reed kind of takes the reins, obviously like he did tonight. And 23 points, 14 assists. Go ahead.
Post-game quote from Ime Udoka on Reed. You can see him growing up right before your eyes. So for all the criticism, is Ime too harsh on Reed? There's some love right there. When he plays like tonight, he's going to get the praise.
One thing I said for sure is Ime wants Reed to succeed. I mean, I see a lot of stuff like he hates Reed. I don't think that's true. He's trying to integrate him into like what he's doing defensively and knowing, and the other thing is this, he hasn't started. He has played heavy minutes for a good long stretch. I think you go back at least 10, 15 games, he's playing 30 minutes a game. Yeah. And you go back, to January 1, he's probably playing, between 25 and 30. So it's not like Reed hasn't had plenty of opportunities to do these kinds of things. But I get it. People want to, it's a status thing. It's also, you're going to start the first, you're going to start the third. Those are significant minutes. But, Reed keeps playing like this. He's not going to let go of that role. That's for sure.
100%. And I've seen some comments in the chat tonight and on social media. Why won't the Rockets and Ime commit to him as the starter the rest of the season? Because the quote last night was, we're going to do it for 6, 7, 8 games and we'll reevaluate right before the playoffs. If he plays anywhere near like he does tonight, he's not coming out of that lineup. I promise you that. The reason they're saying that is that they want to make sure that the production continues when he's a starter. This fifth starter spot. This has been a point of debate ever since Fred VanVleet went down at the end of September. They started the season with Steven Adams as the fifth starter in Oklahoma City. They tried Josh Okogie for a while. And then I remember on Christmas, we were all excited about sliding Tari Eason into the starting lineup. At that time, and still for another month or so, he was shooting incredibly well from three. And on paper, hey, you add his defense to the starting lineup, you can stabilize it. He's going to space the floor with this newfound shooting stroke. We were so excited, and yet pretty much ever since Tari joined the starting lineup, that's about when the offense fell off a cliff and has been your bottom 5 in the league in offensive rating. So we can say that it should work out on paper, but the Rockets have tried a lot of different configurations this year, and nothing has found consistent success. So I do understand why Ime Udoka, before Reed Sheppard goes on a prolonged run with these starters, and you can point out, and rightfully so, Reed's 10-2 as a starter this year. That's true, but these last two have been the first two that he's starting alongside all the other big guns. In most of the other cases, it's been because one of the mainstays was out, and so it's easier to sort of build your offense and your schemes around him. Now you are truly trying to blend the best of Reed Sheppard with the best of those entrenched four, and I think it can work. In my opinion, it should work, but the Rockets, again, they haven't had a solidified starting five since the end of September when Fred went down, and they're not going to 100% commit to anything until they see it on the floor for a few games. If it's anywhere near what it looks like the last two nights, he's going to be the fifth starter. I guarantee you. It's just the Rockets aren't going to prematurely make that declaration. They're just going to wait and see how the next couple of weeks go, and if past two nights
Yeah.
any indicator, it's going to be great.
And also, like, if it doesn't go well in the next handful of games, then and you said he's locked in,
Right.
what do you do if you have to make a change? You're gonna hurt his confidence. I just think this is let him prove it and earn it, and I think he did. He's starting to do that tonight. Interesting. Just a few things I want to point out. Jaime Jaquez Jr. did not play tonight. Andrew Wiggins did not play tonight. Norman Powell did not play tonight. So Heat were missing 3 key guys. What was really fascinating, I don't know the story. I don't know. I don't think there was an injury, but Bilal Ware played less than 5 minutes tonight after pretty much feasting in the game in Miami and was a minus 15. I don't know what I missed. In that stretch. So that was kind of interesting. But Bam tonight, 32 points, a career high 21 rebounds. Tyler Herro was also really effective. And Larson and I'm not going to pronounce this right, Fontecchio.
I think that's right, actually.
Oh, okay, good. Those guys were pretty effective tonight. This was a starters game for both teams for the most part. I mean, those were the guys who were really doing, and we haven't mentioned some of the others. Şengün tonight, 9 of 13 from the field, had 12 boards, 3 assists. KD was, I say quiet, 27 points and passing Michael Jordan. And, that's amazing to pass Michael Jordan. I guess I've kind of become a little bit numb to all the names that he's passing, but Michael Jordan is, to me, he's the GOAT. Yep. And that's to him, for him to pass him on scoring is pretty amazing. 27 points on 9 of 17 shooting. Jabari did not shoot well tonight, but one thing I will give credit for to Jabari is those 2 huge threes when they were really down big. It was kind of coincidence. Reed came in, made that first pass to Jabari in the corner, and then Jabari, off the rebound, basically ran out in transition and just a pull-up 3 in transition. That forced a timeout by the Heat. I think cut the lead to 4, and the Rockets were on their way. So, but he didn't have, in particular, a good shooting night. That's for sure. So shout out to those guys, though, for their contributions to the game as well.
100%. And on KD, I'll be quick, but beyond his scoring brilliance, which is true tonight, it's true for his career. But I'm going to cite a Michael Shapiro quote from one of our earlier shows as far as all the body language experts earlier this week and Kendrick Perkins and all the national storylines. The basketball will determine the feelings. The feelings will not determine the basketball. That's what Michael said on our show, and I think it still holds true today. Those 2 games against the Lakers were incredibly frustrating, but look, if you have a camera on any top shelf NBA player and you're watching every second of what they're doing on the court for 2.5 hours in a game that they lose in an agonizing way, you're going to be able to find 5 to 10 seconds that you can clip and send viral on Twitter and make it seem representative and make it, you know, make these huge storylines. When in reality, it's just a product of the situation. Those were frustrating losses. Everybody's going to, have a few minutes here and there of pouting, or in their case, a few seconds. It's not a big deal. And we saw tonight the body language is miraculously a lot better when the threes are going in and when they're making plays down the stretch of close games. So that's not to say that the body language police can't have a point. I mean, if intel comes out that the environment is toxic, that that they don't like being around each other, that team chemistry is an issue, then sure, like that can be a storyline. But let's wait for actual evidence of that. Clipping something that's 5 to 10 seconds in length and trying to blow it out of proportion, that doesn't really tell you anything. And so, that's not to say that everything's fine, everything's great. I mean, maybe things aren't great. I haven't personally gotten any indication that there's any, chemistry issues, so to speak. But if there are, then fine. We can cross that bridge when we come to it. But
it didn't look like it when they won.
No, not at all. Yeah. Right now, that stuff is just making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah. I mean, they were, as was mentioned in the chat as well, Jabari and Şengün both just, swarmed Amen after that tip in, giving him big hugs. It was kind of a really cool kind of moment. Yeah.
Did you see the comment in the chat? Rockets had great defense on Bam, keeping him 50 under his season high.
That actually is pretty good. It's a good win, and I don't want to definitely downplay it at all. This team, Miami, played fast today. They made it difficult for the Rockets for a good stretch there in that third quarter when Miami closed on a 13-2 run. And like I said, the defense in the third quarter was rough. Matter of fact, even they went with a wings lineup, taking, I think, both Reed and Şengün out, and that lineup struggled defensively in that third quarter. This looked like a loss. So it's a great win. I want to downplay it. It's just, like I said, they're missing a few key guys. And I loved what the Rockets did. I love what Reed did, what Amen did. It's all very, very, very positive vibes. Bigger tests are coming. I like that they're kind of shaking off the negative vibes that we saw after the two Lakers losses. And that's big.
100%. And to close the loop on the chemistry comments, I see someone in the chat pointing out that, it is an issue in the long term. Yeah, it absolutely can be. What I'm saying is that you're not going to be able to tell the chemistry from a 5 to 10 second clip when it's the last 60 seconds of a game that you're clearly going to lose, that got away from you, that you knew going in was massive for you. And, you see Kevin or Alpi or whoever it is, just slumped shoulders and looking frustrated or having an offhand remark or two. Like, you can't use that as a referendum on chemistry. Chemistry absolutely can be and is a big deal. What I'm saying is that you need, much more of a long-term indicator than a few seconds of frustration. That's what I'll say about that.
Yeah. So they finished up the 5-game homestand 3-2. They're 2 games behind last year's pace. So they are the record the Rockets had at this point of the year last year. They now go on a 4-game homestand at Chicago, at Minnesota. Ant's going to still be out for the Minnesota game. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
I think he's out. So that's huge for the Rockets. At Memphis, that's a tanking team, but they did beat Denver recently, so you can't sleep on them. And then at New Orleans, and we've talked about New Orleans extensively, that team is sneaky. On paper, they look like a tanking team, but I think they're actually kind of inching closer to play-in territory because they've been playing so well since DeJounte Murray got back. So 4-game road trip here at Chicago, at Minnesota, at Memphis, at New Orleans. What are you expecting as we go there?
Yeah, I'm nervous because for the season overall, Rockets are now 25-10 at home, which is like a almost 60-win pace, but they are 18-17 on the road, barely better than 500. And if we're talking about, Amen and Reed as the variables, as we saw tonight, guys 23 and 21 years old, those are the types of guys that historically in the biggest games tend to play better at home. So the Rockets right now are in the top 4 of the West. And in terms of, actually, riding the ship and hopefully winning at least a round in the playoffs and being able to be a real threat, which is, the best case scenario. You need to stay in the top 4 so that you have home court advantage in at least one round. And yeah, 4 straight road games for a team that's been 500 on the road isn't easy. I'm hoping that, I like starting off in Chicago because that's one that on paper should be very favorable to you. Then you get Minnesota, a big one in which they probably won't have Anthony Edwards. So any road game makes me nervous these days, but I do like the way it starts out. And I just like the way the Rockets have responded, all around the NBA after they lost, especially that second game to the Lakers. I mentioned the Kendrick Perkins comments. Every talk show around the league this week, the Rockets have been a punchline. All the talk has been what's wrong with the
Oh yeah.
Rockets. And they
Yeah.
came out this weekend against two teams that were both 38 and 31 entering the weekend. I think each was top 6, top 7 in the East. And I said after Wednesday's game, with it being a back-to-back, both of those teams, Atlanta, longest winning streak in the league, I would have been satisfied to go 1-1. To get 2 wins over winning teams on a back-to-back immediately after 48 hours of being the punchline, and even within the fan base. I mean, we know how toxic it's been. Just look at some of
Oh yeah.
the comments after when they
I would say it's worse than national media, and it's the problems inside the house. Yeah.
yeah. And so I like the way it got really, really real after they lost those two to the Lakers. And so I like the way they've responded. There's a lot of pressure on this road trip, especially the games like Chicago that they need to win. But I like what we've seen the last two nights. And then, one last shout out. We've mentioned him a few times already, but Amen Thompson, night 2 of a back to back when supposedly you're not going to have legs, 18 rebounds with the 18th being the game winner in the final second. To have that level of burst on night 2 of a back-to-back, special player.
Think about what the dialogue would be right now, how this post game would be going right now if he didn't tip that in.
Yeah.
I mean, would this just be like a Tari barbecue? I mean, what would we be doing? Like just ripping on him left and right? I don't know. I mean, I feel bad in a way for Tari there, but like all the vibes are good and they would be so negative right now if not for that. And one other thing I was going to mention is, you actually mentioned this the other day, Ben, but how cool would it have been if KD was a little short of the record tonight and went to Chicago for the next game and passed Jordan in Chicago? That would have been kind of funny, but he goes there on Monday night, I believe, for having passed Jordan. So that'll be interesting to see the reception he gets there. But great win for the Rockets, 123-122 at home. Reed really stepping up, Amen really stepping up, and shout out to KD Şengün also for their efficient contributions, offensively, and Jabari, the big shots in the fourth quarter. Not to mention Aaron Holiday, as you mentioned, Ben. Anything else you want to say about this game before we close up?
Nope. I think we've covered it all. I'll just point out 15 threes, their average the last 2 games. To me, that down the home stretch of the year, and hopefully Reed Sheppard as the math advantage can help on that front. That's the variable to watch. When you look at this downturn offensively, which has started really since around the same time Tari went into the starting lineup around, late December, early January, it's been about the 3-point shooting, the lack of accuracy, the lack of volume. If they can start to take and make a respectable amount of threes, it's amazing how quickly a lot of other things can fall in line. So I know it's just 2 games, but to me, that's the big variable to watch. If they can figure out the math discrepancy, and at least, they're not all of a sudden going to, lead the league in attempts or anything crazy like that, but just make it somewhere close to parity, then that can solve a lot of these issues in a hurry.
Yep. Great win. That's Ben DuBose. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Ben DuBose and read all of his stuff out on the Rockets Wire and on ClutchFans. Matter of fact, you actually just wrote a story on ClutchFans, I think, about Reed Sheppard and being put into the starting lineup and some of the data behind that. So go check that out. Appreciate all of you for tuning in on a Saturday night, and we'll be back Monday night for sure after Rockets Bulls. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one.